Welcome once again, everyone interested in this ancient text called the Bible, written thousands of years ago, and yet they say it's supposed to mean something to us today. And this is going to be especially difficult when we look at our passage today in Genesis chapter 12, the last half, where Abram and Sarai travel to Egypt and they engage in some sus behavior that might make us a little bit confused as to why the story is in the Bible, might make us scratch our head thinking, what are we supposed to take out of this story? And as we explore and dig into this, we might get a little bit colorful. The Bible is just about to get real, so buckle up and welcome to Dumb Christian. At the beginning of Genesis chapter 12, we meet Abram, Sarai, and Abram's father, Terah. Terah takes Abram and Sarai and Lot and their whole entourage out of the land of Sumer, and they're headed towards Canaan, but they settle in the land of Haran. And while they are there, tradition tells us that Abram and Sarai cultivated such a relationship with their community that everyone knew that they were righteous and everyone loved Abram and Sarai. The sages say that when everyone else went to bed, Sarai stayed up late by candlelight. God even provided her with supernatural light to help her get the work done that she was trying to do, where she would make clothes or food or prepare things to try and take care of her neighbors. And everyone knew Abram and Sarai were righteous and that they could come to Abram and Sarai, who were extremely hospitable, if they had any needs. Well, God calls them out of Haran and into the land of Canaan. And we see, just for a little bit, we see that Abram, Sarai, Lot, and their whole crew are like kind of traveling a little bit, then they set up camp, and then they travel a little bit, set up camp, and they go through the land of Canaan as God is showing it to them. And every time they set up shop, the traditions also tell us that those people, those tribes, became extremely fond of Abram and Sarai for their hospitality, and how generous they were, how kind and loving they were, and they were righteous. Now, Canaan isn't heaven by any means, but let's say it's Iowa compared to Egypt. Because what happens is, while they're traveling, sojourning, as they say, as they're sojourning, traveling, wandering through the land of Canaan, a famine hits really, really hard. The whole known world at that time is affected by this famine. Up to this point, we've had a very brief meeting and encounter with Abram, and he's only had one, as far as we know. Well, God spoke to him once, go to Canaan, and then while he was in Canaan, he appeared to Abram. And as far as we know, this is as much contact as Abram has had with God at all, as far as we know. And a famine hits, and Abram is left with making the decision, what do we do? And so what Abram decides to do is he takes his whole growing tribe, his burgeoning, I think that's how you say burgeoning tribe, this blossoming tribe, and he takes everyone. He can't go back to Sumer, it's too far, plus God told him to come out of Sumer. So instead what he does is he doesn't have Yelp, he doesn't have GPS, but he knows that there is this land that's closer than Sumer, a land of Egypt, the land of the Nile, where it has this abundant water source, and so there's famine throughout the land of Canaan. If we go there, we might be able to survive. There's no Yelp, but he certainly has heard the rumors that this place ain't no Iowa. This is hell on earth. This is a wicked, vile place of scum and villainy. And yet, he's in this difficult position. What do I do? I am the patriarch. We've talked about the word patriarch before. In our current language, it's kind of like this taboo word, but ultimately Abram is responsible. What it means is he's responsible to take care of, provide for, and prepare his family for any and every eventuality. Famine strikes, he's responsible, and he thinks, how do I handle this unprecedented situation that I've never walked in before? I don't know what to do, so the best thing that I can think of is to go to Egypt. Now, this act of Abram taking his whole family to Egypt is very controversial among Jewish and Christian scholars and teachers, preachers across the board. there are extremely different, even opposing ideas of how to interpret and understand this move from Abram. Because God told him, come out of Haran and go into Canaan. I'm going to give you the land of Canaan. But as far as we know, God didn't tell Abram to go to Egypt. So Abram goes to Egypt to try and provide food, shelter, home, the needs for his family. And we have these very conflicting understandings, interpretations, teachings of what Abram did here. Because some scholars argue and say Abram sinned by going to Egypt because he didn't stay in Canaan where God called him. So that means he didn't trust that God was going to provide and take care of him through the famine. Some scholars say that Abram just continued on through Canaan to Egypt in faith that God was going to protect them while they were in Egypt. And some yet even say that God did call Abram to Egypt as a foreshadowing, almost prophetic vision of what was going to happen, what is going to happen later to this small budding nation of Israel, the 12 tribes, at the end of the book of Genesis. So what do we do with this? There's not just different ideas oh, here's a slightly different perspective, but there is opposing views. You cannot align these views. When one says Abram is deliberately sinning and disobeying God by leaving Canaan, and this is respected, well-respected rabbis, Jews, traditions that have been the teachers the sages who have been taught and repeated, recited, memorized over and over. One says it's sin, and another over here says, no. God called him and told him to go. He was being obedient. And so this story actually is cause for us to hit pause for a second, take a step back and say, wait, what? Excuse me? What is actually going on here? And this is just scratching the surface of how complicated this story is. And I'll tell you, it's taken me a couple weeks wrestling through this story, trying to figure out, God, what's the point? Why is this story in here? So go read it for yourself. Genesis 12:10 through 20. It's 11 verses. It's a real short story. And read it for yourself. God said the way he wants to say it, he'll always say it better than I can say it. I'm just a dumb Christian trying to wrap my head around why this story is even in the Bible. Because, and I'll give you a real quick snapshot, we'll kind of explore some other resources and other ideas, sages, teachings, traditions around the story. But at its core, the basic biblical summary goes like this. Abram and Sarah come to Canaan. Famine hits. It's devastating. They don't know what to do, so they make their way to Egypt. When they get to Egypt, Abram tells his wife Sarai, I want you to do a favor for me. When we get there, everyone is going to want to make you their wife. Every man's going to want to marry you. And I'm 75. They'll kill me so that they can marry you. The crazy thing about this story, about this part of the story, is Sarai is at least 65. She's at least 65, and she is one smoking hot babe. And Abram knows it. So much so that he's convinced, if they know you're my wife, they will kill me so that they can marry you. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to tell everyone that you're my sister, which is a half-truth. They're half-siblings, I think, if we get an accurate understanding of who begat who. I think they share the same father, but not the same mother, something like that. So I don't want you to divulge the true dynamic of our relationship. Tell people we're brother and sister. That way, they won't kill me. And there's some issues that we'll get into with that. So they go and they see, the Egyptians see how beautiful Sarai is, and the guards at the gate take her to Pharaoh, and Pharaoh is just in awe, and Pharaoh gives Abram this elaborate ornate bridal price, just this over-the-top bridal price, because he wants to marry this 65-year-old foreigner because she's something else. And Abram enjoys the gifts, and he has camels and sheep and flocks and gold and gifts, and he enjoys it, while Sarai is in the house of Pharaoh, probably being, attacked. They're trying to, get her, trying to spend time with her, molest her, maybe rape her. And then it says, God sent a plague on Pharaoh's house to protect Sarai, and in honor of her, to guard her, to take care of her. And as Pharaoh kind of tries to play it out and uncover what's the source of this plague, he discovers that Abram and Sarai are actually husband and wife, and he gets really pissed off and he kicks them out of Egypt. Wait, what? Every step of the turn of this story should leave us thinking, what is happening? The story is totally and wholly disconnected from anything else going on. As far as I'm aware, there's nothing in this story biblically, in the scripture of the Bible, that connects to anything else going on clearly. Some of the traditions will tell us that during their time in Egypt, one of Pharaoh's daughters saw how God protected Sarai through the plague, through miracles and his divine power. And, not one of the higher ups, just one of many Pharaoh's unnamed daughters. And she said, oh, I want to join that family. So she leaves Pharaoh's house and goes with Abram and Sarai when they leave Egypt. And this servant's name is Hagar, who we will learn more about in a few chapters, so we're not going to get into it there. But the Bible doesn't necessarily explicitly tell us this is where Hagar is from. So why is this story in the Bible? And it gets worse, because Abram tells Sarah, lie so they don't kill me. And it puts Sarai in a position where she's going to have to deal with men oogling over her, clamoring for some physical ooh la la. And she's going to have to deal with the, toxic, really, actually, truly toxic masculinity, right? That the guys who want to have sex with her, who she's not married to. And okay, so you can see it gets really crazy, really chaotic. What do we do with this? Even when it comes to Abram asking Sarai to lie, the scribes and the traditions don't always necessarily agree. Some of them suggest that Abram did in fact try to protect Sarai by first trying to sneak her into Egypt. So the traditions suggest that he hid her in a crate, and he was just going to walk through the gates with her in a box. Well, the guys at the customs gate, checking everything to make sure they're not bringing anything illegal or, any of those tree bugs that are going to come in and kill all the trees in Egypt, or any illegal fruits, whatever. And they check the box, they find her, and they are just, wow. And so some of the traditions suggest that Abram tried to sneak her in, but in case that didn't work, he said, okay, in case this doesn't work, tell everybody you're my sister, and what I'll do is I'll set a bridal price so high that no one can pay it, except for Pharaoh, which he ends up doing. Okay, so, maybe he's tried to protect her, but, what's happening? It feels so, uncomfortable and disconnected, and it's I thought this guy was supposed to be, God's top dog, one of his best friends. Is Abraham really, not Abraham, he is Abraham, but his name isn't changed till later. So in this part of the story, their names are still Abram and Sarai. So I'm trying to stick with that. Okay. Is Abram God's dude? Is Abraham this righteous guy? Or is he this insecure, fearful, selfish guy? Is there value in what he's doing, or is it devastating and dangerous? Is he just being selfish? Is he being protective? Is he caring for his wife? What are we supposed to get out of this? One of the things that all the traditions do agree on is that regardless of Abram's motivation, his righteousness, or his sinfulness, whatever it was, God protected Sarai. And the Midrash says that God sent an angel to protect Sarai, and anytime anyone tried to approach her to do the horizontal mambo, she would ask God to protect her, and the angel would strike the man with a weak peony. And this was the plague that covered the house of Pharaoh. And even Pharaoh himself, when he came to have sex, this is what the traditions say, came to have sex with Sarai, he got the limp dick. And this erectile dysfunction that has spread throughout the entire palace has got Pharaoh wondering, what have we been afflicted by? It started when Sarai got here, and it was God's provision and God's protection through this chaotic, unprecedented, confusing situation and circumstance that they find themselves in, whether they caused it themselves or God put them there. And God liberated, and not just liberated Abram, Sarai, and their family, but God provided them with a generous source of wealth and income as a result of how well he wants to take care of those who love him. And so when we look at, and this is going to be true for a lot of stories that we look at in the Bible, things are in the Bible, when we see things in the Bible, it isn't necessarily that God is trying to tell us, this is how I want you to behave. This is something that you should do. You should act this way. The Bible is simply recording and documenting what happens, and then also including how God interacts with what's happening. So this story isn't there to encourage us, hey, husbands, tell your wives to lie about your relationship for your own benefit. But it does teach us that God is faithful to care for, love, provide, and protect for his people. For those who love him and are doing their damn best to follow God, he is in the middle of it. Even when what they do is unclear of their motivation. Are they trying to follow God, or are they just doing the best that they can in the situation they find themselves in? I don't know how else to respond to this situation except to ask Sarai to tell people she's my sister. And this is the steadfastness, the faithfulness, the consistency of God, and how well he takes care of, loves, and provides for those who love him and those who are seeking after him, whether they are doing it just right or not. Anybody wrestling with that? We're experiencing an unprecedented famine in the land, and we don't know what to do, so we need to figure out how to take care of our family. Maybe the family is falling apart. Maybe the marriage is broken and I don't know how to follow God. I'm just doing the best that I can. I've got a kid that's run away and I don't know how to love them like God wants me to. I'm just doing the best that I can. I'm depressed. I'm in despair. I feel hopeless and I want to follow God. I'm just doing the friggin' best that I can. Anybody know what that's like? And this picture of Abram and Sarai, where we don't understand, I don't know how we could possibly know what the true motivation behind Abram's actions here are. Going to Canaan or going to Egypt and then asking his wife to lie about their relationship. Like, where is this coming from? What's going on? But what we can see is God's generous, faithful love for his people. regardless of how well they're following him. And so as I step back and consider, what do we do with this story? I don't know how it fits. I don't know what we're supposed to take away from Abram and Sarai and Pharaoh and this sus trip to Egypt. But I do know that it shows us how reliable God is, even when those of us who are seeking him really screw it up. And I don't know if that's all there is to take away from it, but I think that's a pretty damn good thing to take away from this really confusing, seemingly out of place story about Abram, Sarai, and this sus journey into Egypt. But maybe if God sees fit to reveal to us here at Dumb Christian, maybe we'll come back to this story and explore why Abram did what he did. But until then, I'm just a dumb Christian doing what I can. I love you guys. We'll catch you later. Okay, there it is. Short and not too sweet, maybe a little bitter, maybe a little too close to home for some of us as we wrestle with what it looks like to trust God as we walk through some decisions that we make for ourselves, for our families, for those of us that we care about, for those around us that we care about. And we don't necessarily know what we're supposed to do, how to follow God just the right way, but we are just doing the damned best that we can. And he is faithful to us. Be sure to check us out on YouTube if you haven't seen us there yet. We have some exclusive content, Dumb Christian Thoughts, Dumb Christian Dad Jokes, and what's the other one? Oh yeah, Dancing with Jesus. Be sure to hit subscribe, like, share this with your friends, family. Don't go on this journey alone. Ring that bell. Here comes the butler. I'll be there shortly, sugar. Love you guys. Later.